What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 727 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, the hot tags of the week. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
And Robbie Felice.
Hey.
And of course, joined by all of you. So you are a part of this as well, and that means that you should be leaving your comments below and telling us what you think about these topics. And you can do that on all the different platforms, so you can listen to us, or you can just hop on over to Facebook, Twitter, put something on smarkoutmoment.com, hop on to our Discord channel and chat it up over there. Or if you are on YouTube, then make sure that you also hit the like button, you subscribe, ring that notification bell, get your email alerts set up for live shows, and also join the different tiers that we have on the YouTube channel membership. Now, if you're on the $5 and up tier, you're going to get a little early access to something for, whenever we record something in advance, and then I can post that, and that's going to be next week's main event. Took that out already, and I just haven't uploaded it yet because I didn't want to overload the hot tags on that front, so I'm going to upload it a little bit later on today. But the Darkcast tiers, obviously, that's where you could get the Darkcasts, and then the Pick Your Poison tier, you get to request things in particular that you would like us to do. And all that stuff's greatly, greatly appreciated. Even the $1 a month is something that's awesome and really is helping out. Same with Patreon. And if you want to pick up merchandise, Redbubble and TeePublic is also a great way to help us out and keep the lights on here. So keep all that in mind as different ways to support us as you listen to 727 episodes worth of this. I mean, that's we were just talking before this about, do we think we're going to get to 1,000? I don't know. Knock on wood. Hopefully by episode 1,000, it's like, things are 1,000 times better. But yeah, we'll see about that. We got to get through episode 727 first. The hot tags for this week, we got some interesting topics when it comes to some names. We got some title implications going forward. We should start with something, though, that we had talked about before, and it just continues to be another bad situation for Ridge Holland. He had been released from WWE during the most recent set of, it wasn't like one time everybody gets released all in one day, but it was kind of over like the course of like a 2-week period. They released a lot of people, and most of them were in that NXT and Evolve side of things. But Ridge Holland was a previous NXT UK guy. He goes over to NXT, goes to the main roster, goes back to NXT, then goes to Evolve. They shifted him around a whole lot. But as we mentioned before, he got injured on a TNA show and has been out of action for a little while. And WWE released him and agreed to pay for his surgery. Yet, of course, as a release would go, wouldn't continue to pay him afterward. And you can make the arguments all you want about, like, technically speaking, a company doesn't owe you money after they fire you or whatever, and that, quote unquote, he could go and work elsewhere, but by being injured, he can't. And Ridge Holland had talked about this and spoken up about, that he's going to be out of action for at least 7 months, maybe longer, which means that he can't go pro wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Like, he can't do his job and make money. And he's now put up a GoFundMe and has talked about how, he's going to have issues with paying his mortgage. I see some people that have donated to that. Chelsea Green has pledged a monthly $1,000 amount. I believe Nick Jackson had sent some money, and some other people.
As well, and so did Jinder Mahal.
Jinder Mahal, and who was the other one?
Kyle Fletcher.
Kyle Fletcher did. And I think Omos did when I was looking through there. I don't remember the amounts. It doesn't matter. The point being, some people are willing to help out with that, but I don't think you're going to be all that surprised to hear our opinions about this. This is shitty. This is this kind of stuff should not happen, especially for a company that's as big and talks about all the revenue that they make as WWE does. And when you have your quarterly profits and you're talking about, you know, WWE made more money than UFC did and all these millions and millions of dollars and all that, and you're like, and then you got a guy that's been on the roster for as long as he's been on there, and now he's booted out right when he's injured, and you are going to be worried about paying your mortgage. Like, this should not be a thing. Across the board, the world is just like shitty when it comes to these things, and corporations are evil and all. But that sucks.
Yeah, so they terminated him early because he had been informed that his contract wouldn't be renewed, and they terminated him like 3 weeks early after he made the public comments, which I don't know if you're getting paid weekly in WWE or whatever, but they had let him go even earlier because he made the public comments about, like, imagine getting the rug pulled out from under you like this. Chelsea Green did share the GoFundMe. She would later delete the tweet sharing it. As I've said to some friends, as long as she doesn't delete the recurring donation, that's fine. It is unfortunate because I've said this a lot lately, but like the TKO structure seems to be making the Vince McMahon structure look like look like they were a big old family company. You know, like it's just crazy how detached they are from just being good people. Like, yeah, okay, they're paying for the surgery and stuff. Good. I'm glad you're doing the bare minimum of like humanity, especially because he was wrestling for TNA on WWE's behalf and didn't even get paid extra for the appearances in TNA. So the whole thing is just kind of shitty.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much more to add to it. We knew it was a bad situation already because of the informing someone that they're going to be released while injured anyway, and so restricting their ability to earn any income beyond the point of their contract expiring, and just paying for their surgery, just like, as I said, the bare minimum. I guess there's always going to be people coming out of the woodwork saying that it was his fault that he got terminated because he made that rant online and put out like his frustrations about the whole situation, which he's since come out and said that he regrets doing. Which he probably doesn't regret doing it because it meant that he, didn't get paid more than he was going to. But it's all these people that are more than willing to suck a billionaire's dick for some reason. It's like, oh whoa, the $1 billion company's been mocked and questioned and all this shit, so we must go and grab our spears and start fighting for them. Whereas, it's the guy who, notwithstanding the fact that I don't think he was like the greatest wrestler of all time, but he did his job and he was put in situations and, did what he had to do for the company in a kind of lower mid-card position. And yeah, I'd say I think it's one of those things that you can kind of understand in a way, not re-signing a guy that you don't really see a lot of future potential or worth in, and just letting him go at the end of his contract. But it's just these circumstances in his particular case of how he got injured, where he got injured, the fact that like it was something that he just did extra as part of his work to go to a different place, get injured by someone, or get injured during the match, unfortunately. And you would have thought that, with the amount of money WWE has, you could say, okay, we'll keep him on board and keep paying him up until the duration of his injury and then just let him go because we're not planning on using him. But then at least he's healthy. He can go into another career path, not having any financial security worries over his housing or anything along those lines. He's he's British as well, so he's living in America. He's like from a different, so he's got visa issues to worry about as well, probably. So yeah, I think that it's an all-round like shitty situation, but it's good that at least some people from the wrestling community have decided to support him during this really bad situation.
And it shouldn't be on them to have to do that. Like, just the same as it is for like any other thing. And like everybody that's listened to this podcast long enough knows where we stand politically and how, like, you know, the people in charge, not only in America, but elsewhere, whether they got there quote unquote legally or not. There's a reason why somebody like Steve Bannon says, you know, if Democrats get in control, we're all going to prison. Like, you're all criminals and you're all disgusting, terrible people. But, you know, that stuff aside, just generally speaking, even if that wasn't the case with, you know, the political climate being the way that it is right now, it's always the case for corporations and businesses to just be disgusting and to just be heartless and cutthroat and to try to justify being greedy by being like, well, that's business, baby, and, you know, whatever. And if you're this, like, you have zero empathy type of person and you literally only care about money and you have no morals whatsoever, then you're going to argue things like, okay, a corporation technically doesn't have to pay somebody, and that, you know, Ridge Holland could theoretically get some other job, like, oh, well, then go work at Walmart or whatever the hell. Like, you can do that kind of thing and just be a fucking Scrooge of everything. But, like, I don't know, like, fuck me for wishing that people had at least a modicum of morality in situations that are, you can play around with that. And like, if you don't have anything to give, that's one thing. But when you make record profits and when you figure out ways to do things the way that you do, and when people make as much money as they do at the top, you can afford it. And I really hope, I don't expect it to happen, but I really hope that this is something that, like, people bring up in the back and people bring up when they have an actual voice. Because, like, this podcast isn't going to change anything. And more popular podcasts aren't going to change anything. People tweeting out about that stuff, you know, enough people do, and maybe WWE pays attention, but it's really up to the people that work within the company to make a stand. And you just be like, you need to stop treating people poorly. And we've seen that almost never happens because people don't have a spine. Otherwise, they would have had a union decades ago. And if that would have been the case, then this union would have been fighting for Ridge Holland's rights. And I don't know. I mean, I can cross my fingers and hope that maybe this would be the type of thing that could spark that. But I don't have a whole lot of faith that that is going to be the case. And I would love to see, you know, a future episode of the Hot Tags, us talk about the Ridge Holland situation brought about a wrestlers union. And like I said, I'm not holding my breath for it, but that sucks. And hopefully, in whatever way that it is, he bounces back. I don't know. Ridge Holland, of course, you know, I've never met the guy or whatever, so I don't know if he's a good guy or if he's a piece of shit or something like that. You know, sometimes you meet people and it seems like they're a piece of shit and they're actually really awesome. Sometimes you meet somebody, you think that they're cool, and then they turn out to be Tyrus. And Brodus Clay seemed pretty cool when I met him at WrestleMania 29. I went home being like, yeah, that dude's awesome. You know, a bunch of years later, and never mind. But just throwing him under the bus there randomly. You know, Ridge Holland
needs to be a pretty big bus.
Yeah, and he went from somebody that I was like, man, I like this guy a lot, to, yeah, here's 3 middle fingers for you if I can find a third one. And you know, Ridge Holland, I hope we have a better update to that story somewhere down the line. Let's bounce to, you know, I don't know too much about this specifically, but hey, for a company that makes record profits and stuff, they have a release window of WWE 2K26, and that is, according to a couple different reports and everything that they've got going on, they are releasing during Q4 of Take-Two's interactive fiscal year 2026. Of course, this was all just like blah, 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 blah stuff or whatever. But Yeah, I mean, they typically release around the same time, usually in that like November window, if I remember correctly, and sometimes maybe October or so. But now it's being listed as January 1st through March. Was it March 30th or 31st or whatever?
That's why this is interesting, because they had released in the October-November slot for the majority of time, but after the disaster that was 2K20, they switched over to releasing in the March window, that WrestleMania window, and now with the financial earnings report, which is the same place where we got the information that GTA 6 has again been delayed. They've announced that they're pushing the game back to Q4 of the fiscal year in 2026, which is that July through September range. So that's interesting. There's also a WWE mobile game that's supposed to be playable through the Netflix app that is scheduled still to be released in fall of this year. So you've got about a month before we officially enter winter. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes out. But I don't know how I feel about this, because I like the idea of giving a game a little bit more time to cook, not 14 years, Grand Theft Auto, but I also like the idea of the wrestling games being released around WrestleMania. I thought that made the most sense. So we'll see how this goes.
I could see an argument for it being around that time frame, though, not just for like we need some more time. Well, let me backtrack. I don't understand how they necessarily perpetually need more time to release games that are essentially the same game. Now, I'm not a game developer, but to me, it sort of feels like every WWE 2K game is you take the same game, you rescan the characters, and then you tweak a few little things and go like, in this one, we've got access to a couple more custom moves, and you can, I don't know, the GM mode is this story or whatever. Kind of seems like you should start with like a 75% base already finished. But I don't know, for all I know, that's the type of thing where they go, yeah, we do, but at the same time, that 25% takes us a long fucking time or something. But I think that having everything front loaded with, that January to April range of like the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania and the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame's not like a moneymaker, but like, as far as like importance goes, and kind of like everything at the beginning of the year ends up being where they make a good chunk of their money for the whole rest of the year. Maybe it is better to have it come out a little bit later and to do something else to just get people talking. You said what, July through September?
Yeah.
So that's more so SummerSlam. And I don't know, maybe there's like something positive about releasing that in the summer. Maybe that gets people playing the game when they're out of school or something. I don't know. I have not played a WWE game for more than like 15 minutes in the past, I don't know, 8 years or so. It's not my thing. I've never been a big fan of the WWE games. I'm not too much of a gamer as it is. Still playing Legends EA though. It's a fun game. Not as good as Legends Arceus, but but you guys have played.
Hall Lucha's featured in that. That's a wrestling game.
I can't find an alpha Holucha yet. I wanted to put a Holucha on my team, and it's one of like the 3 things that I went ahead of time going, oh, I'm going to use this for my team. I wanted to use that and a Hoon Edge, and I went ahead being like, I'm going to pick Totodile. And the Hoon Edge, the one Hoon Edge I came across sucked, and all the Holuchas I come across are not all that good either. And I'm like, oh, I'm so disappointed. I'm as far as I am through the game and didn't get a chance to use any of them. So, but you guys have played the 2K games before and all that. Is there like any, man, I'm looking forward to 2K26 from either of you, or is this just like, who cares at that point?
I probably care more than Callum. I really loved these games to a certain point. But I think once 2K completely took over about 10 years ago, the series fell off hard for me. I get them every year. I'm always hoping that they're better. They haven't been. I would love a complete overhaul of the grappling system. I would love a complete overhaul of a lot of things in the games. But at the same time, I can also admit I'm 32 years old. If there are kids out there who are just like, these are the best games and these are the best times of my life, then hey, that's all that matters. And I hope that there's at least a generation of people having those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played any 2K games for at least probably the second 2K game came out, so it's like I'm far removed from anything WWE content or gaming related. Almost certainly want to pay for stuff. There's too many games. They're all very expensive. Like, I'm not going to waste money on that stuff. I don't play any sort of sport games anymore. Really, it's like they're just frustrating, and I usually only play like the WWE games for like story modes and season modes and stuff like that, and now they're just I kind of got burnt out when they started just going and rehashing old WWE storylines or going back through the old like I don't know what would you call it, the like the Stone Cold through his career journey things, or the DX thing and all those lines. It's like, yeah, well, you're just just taking storylines that we've already seen and just rehashing them and turning them into video games, which I guess is fine as a novelty once or twice. But when you just that's the only thing that you do for a story, like you go through John like the Undertaker streak or John Cena's career, and it's like, okay, well, what how about like a new story or a new like when they used to do the whole like Road to WrestleMania story where you're Chris Jericho wandering around backstage and you stole the WWE Championship from Triple H. You built a whole storyline around that, and Edge and Christian reuniting for a run where one of them's the WWE Champion, one of them's the World Heavyweight Champion going into WrestleMania, or just anything that's like an original story for the WWE games. I know they have these like what do you call it, the create your character ones. Yeah, the My Career ones, create the character ones, but they're so like all the clips I see of them, they're just so lame, and like the funny bits and pieces I see of like John Cena not being voiced by John Cena. I know that was a while ago, but like it still just rings my memory.
I'm sorry, wait. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, there was. I can't remember which WWE 2K game it was, but it was one where like John Cena was part of the career mode, but they couldn't actually get John Cena to voice himself, so they got someone else to voice John Cena instead.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that sort of thing sticks with me. But yeah, I'd say like I know they still do that, but they're quite dull and they're just very match heavy. Just you go from one match to another match without any real major development in between it. I say it's. I tried some of them, tried some of the early ones, mainly for like the GM mode, but I find GM mode quite dull now. So yeah, there's no chance of me ever buying any 2K game again, I think.
I want another publisher to take it. Like if I had my way, a smaller publisher would take it. They'd put a little more love into it instead of the idea of AAA bloat and it just being a big deal because it's WWE 2K. I'd like that. I would like, I know I'm from a bygone time, but like I remember where you used to get multiple games per year depending on the console you had, but console exclusives are no longer a thing, which I think is terrible. But I will give them credit for one thing when you talk about the Stone Cold mode and the DX mode. Javon Evans recently said that it was playing through that he learned about the career of Shawn Michaels. So remember,
Really?
for the younger kids, yeah. So for the younger kids, it's like it can be an educational tool as long as they show enough interest. For me, the last time I tried it was last year's, and I was playing through Hogan and Andre, and in the first 2 seconds, Bobby Heenan grabbed the kendo stick and tossed it into Andre, and I was like, well, I am completely out of the immersion. I no longer want to play. And then
you don't remember when that happened?
I know, right as the bell rang, Bobby Heenan grabbed the kendo stick from under the ring. Who could forget?
You don't remember when The Rock and Mankind were fighting each other in that I Quit match, and they only hit each other in the back with the steel chair?
Oh yeah, in the gut and in the back. That's how it happened.
Yep, that's the only thing that happened. Nobody ever got hit in the head, ever. Yeah.
And said that Mick Foley had incredible stomach pains. Never had a concussion though.
You can fantasy book your Undertaker versus Big Boss Man Hell in a Cell match, which completely ends with a regular pinfall and nothing else.
Yeah, no, nobody gets hanged.
No, you can't possibly have that. That didn't happen. Yeah. Well, yeah. If anybody's in their interest for 2K26, you're gonna have to wait a little bit later than you normally do. But for all we know, maybe it ends up being a better game because of it. Who knows? I'm not gonna be buying it no matter what. So, oh well, from that front. But we'll cover that, down the line. Probably the next time we'll get talked about will probably be when they say who's on the cover, because I can't imagine that there's going to be other stories to really talk about. So I don't know who's going to be a big enough deal by then that they will put them on the cover, but based off of the previous years, it's probably going to just be the same few names. So it'll just be, Punk or Roman or Lesnar or something. I don't fucking know. Let's go and switch gears a little bit to talk about New Japan. And, as per usual, New Japan is something that I don't follow, but it's had a pretty busy couple days setting up some stuff for Wrestle Kingdom. And I'll pass this over to Callum to explain it a little bit better, because I'm sure I'll do a better job than I would do for what's been happening the past few days.
Well, I can't really talk about what happened on the show. Well, I can talk about the results. I didn't watch the show because I don't watch New Japan really anymore at all. But there were some things coming out of the Hiroshi Tanahashi kind of final homecoming show. One of the biggest things, of course, being what happened in the main event and the semi-main event. So you had Yota Tsuji defeat Hiroshi Tanahashi to retain the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. And then in the main event, Konosuke Takeshita successfully defended the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship against Hiroki Goto. And so afterwards, obviously the expectation was Konosuke Takeshita would be challenged by the person that would be fighting him for the title at Wrestle Kingdom. And out came Yota Tsuji. So it's been announced that the main event of the Wrestle Kingdom show, or at least the world title match for the Wrestle Kingdom show, we don't know whether it'll be the main event because they might do the Tanahashi retirement match as the main event. But the world title match will be a double title match. It will be the World Heavyweight Championship versus the Global Heavyweight Championship, and the winner gets both belts. Which I think, in the circumstances, I can understand why they are doing that. But I think, I correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, because it just feels like this rather than actually being the case. It does feel like they've done this at least 3 times in the last 5 years, where the main event of Wrestle Kingdom.
Because they have. They just unified So it was 5 years ago that they unified the IWGP Heavyweight and the Intercontinental Heavyweight to create the IWGP World Heavyweight. Then they fucked around with the US title, made it the UK title while Ospreay held it, and then said it's the global title. And now you're merging the global and the world. So you're the Super Mega World Heavyweight Champion?
So it comes down to Wrestle Kingdom 14 in 2020. They did Okada versus Naito for both the IWGP and the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. And those titles weren't unified. It was just that Naito carried around both titles until he lost one of them. And then at Wrestle Kingdom 15, they did do Kota Ibushi versus Jay White for the IWGP Heavyweight and the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. And that's when they unified them into the new, the new version of the World Championship that then got replaced by, became the New Japan World Championship, that then got replaced by the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship again. But essentially they've done this before as a means of making it sound like a bigger deal. That was when they were doing Wrestle Kingdom 2-night shows. So it's not, so it's not out of the question. It's certainly an old trick that they've pulled out of their shorts when something's not going well or they need to sell out the building. They'll pull the old winner takes all match to be the main event. So it makes it more interesting because I think that it could go either way, because obviously Takeshita is not a full-time New Japan guy because he divides his time between AEW, New Japan, and DDT. Tsuji is a full-time New Japan guy, so it would feel a bit weird that they would put both titles on Takeshita. So I think it probably actually makes it more likely that Tsuji's going to win the titles at Wrestle Kingdom instead.
Yeah, I think they're strapping the rocket to Tsuji, and I get it. Like, he's one of the guys you've got. You can try to build around him. I just think it's lame because they've done this so much. Like, they just created the Global Championship. Wasn't that last year? I guess it doesn't mean that it has to go away. But if you're, again, and this is just a naming convention issue, and I don't know what's in a name, but Global and World probably don't need to be a thing.
So the Global Championship was 2 years ago. Technically, it was Wrestle Kingdom 18 was when that was crowned. So
we're gonna come back to the name being a stupid thing that I don't know why people have a bad idea of naming things the way that they name them when we talk about another championship a little bit later. But it does just strike me as like, when a company does this, as you broke it down earlier, you guys were talking about like the Intercontinental merging, and then you break the Global and the UK and the US, whatever. It just kind of comes off to me as like, you don't know what you want to do. And I don't know what this fascination has been lately. I've called it out, I don't know, maybe even it might have been a year ago at this point that I called this out, but like, we're in this era where people love to give like double champions and stuff. And Roman had his 2, if not 3 titles, because it was like, let's give him a championship and then have the 2 other championships with Paul Heyman and whatever. And Mercedes has like a dozen titles, and Brodito is like, Bandito's got 2 belts, and there just seems to be this like collective consciousness in pro wrestling, whether it's WWE, TNA, NXT, blah, blah, blah. Point being, for some reason, people really, really want, if you're a champion, let's give you another belt on top of that instead of spreading the wealth. And when they created that Global Championship, it seemed to me, at least from an outsider's perspective, to be, okay, well, crap, we got rid of the other belts, and, we need to create another thing because we need something to fill that spot. And if they're feeling now like they need to get rid of that spot, then that's weird, because you could have just, if it's all about Yota Tsuji needs to win their main title, did he need to win the Global Championship and then win it, come out and be a challenger in the way that he did? Couldn't it have just been something where you made him beat Zack Sabre Jr.? And if it's a matter of you need to get rid of the Global Championship, why? Like, I don't understand what the goal here is.
I don't think they're unifying it. I think they're just they'll do the thing they did with Naito, where he's holding both titles and he'll lose one of them at some point. But so I don't think they're getting rid of it, because at the end of the day, it is their secondary championship. The reason why he's probably holding the title is because they needed to do something to try and warm him up, because they've done such a piss poor job of building anybody new up in the company. So they decided, well, the best way of doing that is giving him our secondary title and then positioning him to be the world champion instead. So, and they've had like kind of in their own way building this up, because you had Takeshita knocked out Tsuji from the Wrestle Kingdom things. There's an inbuilt rivalry or history between them there. So this is Tsuji's chance to get one over on Takeshita and take the world championship in the process. So there is like, a weird logic behind it, but Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why he's holding the secondary title, is because, well, for two reasons. One, because they need to try and elevate him and try and build a bit of prestige around him, because he hadn't really done much since his big debut, where he did fight for the world title and lost, and then he's kind of just been circling around ever since then. But, and also because they want to do a double title match because it sounds better on a marquee. So, and like, just Takeshita versus Tsuji is not going to move a lot of tickets, and they're very, very much, even still for the double title match, they're still very much going to be leaning heavily into the Tanahashi retirement match, and whoever that's going to be, whoever his opponent's going to be for that, because they still haven't announced an opponent for him. It's just to be announced. There's a lot of speculation or rumor going around that it's going to be Shinsuke Nakamura.
I think it's going to be Nakamura. I think, I know it's hard, but I think this is one of those things where they might find a way just to go, all right, this means a lot to you, do it. We're not doing shit with you. Just do the match. Because yes, they have the relationship with AEW, but it's also like, you know, Sting and Nakamura were on the same card for Noah, weren't they?
Yeah, it would have been.
Yes,
for the Keiji Muto retirement stuff.
Yeah, I think you could probably find a way to do something similar here and give one of the legends a nice little send off. I'll say this: I think they should do their best to heat up this Takeshita Tsuji thing, because, yeah, I don't know how many people are going to care about just another merger. Maybe try to make it like, you know, a really intense personal thing about how you were picked to be the leader of New Japan, and an outsider had to come in and take the belt because you're not good, you know? Just something. But like, can't remember the last time I was excited for a Wrestle Kingdom outside of a Kenny Omega being in Japan match.
I mean, the last time that I watched a Wrestle Kingdom as like, I'm gonna watch that show, as opposed to, I mean, I guess I'll have it on and I'll try to do some coverage of it or whatever, was Styles in the main event against Shinsuke Nakamura. So it goes to show, like,
And that was 10 years ago.
Right, like, you know,
And not the main event.
It wasn't the main event? I thought it was.
No.
Yeah, 10 years ago. There you go. I was track of that. But that was like a means for me to be like, oh, let me watch the show because I'm actually interested to see what happens here. And then ever since then, it's just been, I don't know, maybe I'll check it out if I'm awake. Now, the time frame, of course, makes a big difference to that too, but also just a matter of, they don't do anything that makes me feel like I should watch it either. And, you know, belt for belt, it's diluted. We've seen, if I kept track of it this year alone, just in the WWE landscape, let alone, you know, when it comes to AEW, which tends to do a little bit more of like belt for belt type stuff, there's been like maybe like 4 or 5 examples. And I don't know, I just, that gimmick doesn't do anything for me anymore. It's more so like, okay, well then now I'm confused about where you're going to go. And you know, we got like another one coming up with Full Gear with Chris Statlander against Mercedes Moné. And I'm not particularly like, oh man, that means so much more. And that feud is great because of that. I'm just looking at that match and going, well, did they just take the belt off of Statlander already and that kind of sucks? Or is this another pointless Mercedes goes for that belt and loses match and it's just repeating the same thing as happened with Toni Storm? I look at it as like a break glass in case of emergency thing that they've already broken. And now I don't feel any sense of urgency. I just want to know where they're going afterward. And with New Japan not being a fan of it, not watching and being invested in there, when I hear that Yota Tsuji is bringing the global title and he's fighting the world champion that was previously merged before and the other title, it just seems like you funnel multiple belts in there. And it's like, can you take 10 minutes to sit down, look at your roster, figure out how many championships you want, and then just say, we need this mid-card title, we need this world title, we need these tag titles, we need blah, 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 and then just do it. And I'm going to come back to that when we talk about the other championship, but I want to toss some other things in there in the meantime, so we're not just talking titles for the whole rest of this thing.
Yeah. I will say that, to point out the kind of ridiculousness of the statements that you were saying about Chris Statlander and Mercedes Moné, first of all, that match isn't title for title. It's not going to be. It's for the World Championship. It's just for the World Championship. Secondly,
technicality,
Mercedes, No, it's very different. It is a very different thing. It is a specifically very different thing, because if Chris Statlander wins, she just keeps her world title, and Mercedes just keeps her titles. Secondly, like, this is different in the sense that this is going to be 2 New Japan titles being either merged or someone holding both titles, whereas someone like Mercedes, for instance, is holding 1 title for each promotion that she's kind of representing. So she's just champion of multiple promotions. She's not a double champion in AEW. She's just,
unless she wins this match.
You can't count the ROH interim title.
Well, it's an ROH belt, not an AEW belt.
That's another technicality. Come on. If somebody's holding an NXT title and a WWE title, we're calling him the double champion for Sol Ruka, and that was the Speed title before it switched over to NXT.
Well, then it became an NXT title. So
but they were calling her a double champion before that. She's a double champion. It counts that way.
Well, she's still a double champion, yeah. But she's holding titles for, like, as I say, it's different for the WWE side of things. Maybe it's not so different. Okay, the Ring of Honor one is slightly thing, but all the other belts, like, that's just 2 titles, and all the rest of them are from other promotions all across the world. So I kind of allow a little bit more leeway for that, because that's other promotions deciding to make Mercedes their champion. It's not an AEW edict. The Ring of Honor one is an AEW edict, so I can understand that one. But it's more of a case of, like, with this particular one, it just feels like a desperation move. Whereas the Mercedes thing is, like, they are telling a story with her, of her holding all of these championships and her going for the title. It's saying, like, it's going to be a rehash of the Tony Storm fight. No, it's just further progressing the story that she keeps fighting for all the other titles and winning them, but she can't win the AEW World Championship because she's too focused on all the other titles to win it. So it's just you can't just tell that story once. You have to show it multiple times to build that frustration upwards. So I'm happy enough with that story being told. Whereas this one, for the New Japan in particular, it just feels like an act of desperation, because they need to sell tickets to this show, because their popularity is dwindling so heavily that they need to try and throw some sort of gimmick or extra layer into a match, which is, it should be fine on its own. You should be able to do just Yota Tsuji versus Konosuke Takeshita for the World Championship. But they fucked around by, like, having Takeshita having to win the G1, which means that Tsuji can't win the G1. So Tsuji has to do something else. He has to go, like, a different pathway to try and get into this match, rather than, having Takeshita already be champion, and then Tsuji wins the G1, and then there's just more natural coming together between those two. But it's difficult. Well, I say difficult, but they've made such a difficult situation of this, made such a, like, heavy weather of trying to push young guys and trying to get guys over after, just resting on their laurels with Okada and Naito and Ospreay and Jay White and all of these people. Once they all disappear or leave for whatever reasons, obviously mostly going to AEW, but some just leaving of their own accord, then they're just left with the people that they just refuse to push and refuse to put over in the meantime. And this is the situation they've been living with for the past 2 or 3 years, where they really are just heavily dependent on doing things like this double championship match, and the fact that Tanahashi's retiring on the show. And, you can't rely on Tanahashi retiring on every show going forward.
It's literally can't.
Like, this will be it. Yeah, this will be it. So if they do get Nakamura to be the one with Tanahashi, then that will settle. But the issue is that the reason why I'm still hesitant about it is because surely if you have Nakamura lined up, then you would announce it by now. Like, there's only, like, 2 months before the show, which obviously feels like a long time, but you want to try and sell out this building as quickly as possible and get that guaranteed money in. Like, they've sold about 30-something thousand tickets, which is pretty good going, considering. But I think a lot of it is, in respect to Tanahashi's retirement more than anything else. So
and that
you
it's
have
just Wrestle Kingdom. Like, how
Yeah,
many
absolutely.
people buy tickets for WrestleMania, before a single match has been announced? Most of them, just because it's
so
Mania.
it's got that thing going for it. So, but you would have thought if you have Nakamura, then you announce Nakamura. Like, there's no big shows left. All the rest of the shows going into Wrestle Kingdom are the World Tag League stuff, and then a few like Road to Wrestle Kingdom shows. So you don't have you don't have any big show to announce if it is Nakamura or whoever's going to be fighting Tanahashi. So, like, you should do it sooner rather than later, just to get some ability to build it up. But as I think that it will be Nakamura, just because I don't know who else is a big enough deal, because I don't think they'll just go with Okada again, because they made a big song and dance a few like last year before Okada left to join AEW about that being their final match together. So I don't know if they'll try and sully that and go with another Okada match. And I don't know if there's anyone else from AEW that'll come over. Maybe Omega, maybe Ospreay. Ospreay probably won't be healthy by that point, but maybe Omega. But Nakamura makes the most thematic sense based on their past history and how they both came up in New Japan at the same time. But I just don't. It just all boils down to whether WWE will allow one of their wrestlers to compete on a New Japan show. Because the Noah thing is different, because it's not a case of. I don't think it's even down to the case of if AEW people are wrestling on the show, because as they had the Noah one, but Noah is a WWE preferred promotion, because they've obviously had that semi-working relationship where some people went over to Noah for those shows. Some whoever that guy was from Noah came over to WWE for a while and teaming with Josh Briggs.
Yoshiki Inamura.
Yeah, Inamura. So yeah, they have some kind of like cordial relationship, whereas like New Japan is enemy territory. So it's whether they would allow that to happen. They should, because it actually is one of the things that could actually get them some good publicity, that allowing Nakamura to go over. But that's the very reason why I don't think they will do it, because they seem allergic to doing anything that will give them good publicity.
And I mean, if you're smart, you can barter something and be like, if you really want Shinsuke Nakamura to go over to your company, we don't really love the idea about lending our people out, especially to a company that's got such heavy ties with our main competition that we're incredibly, pissy about in a lot of ways that we don't necessarily need to be, but that's another whole story that we've talked about before. But like, okay, well then you scratch our back too, if we're going to scratch your back. And I don't know what that would necessarily be, because it's not like they can just be like, all right, well then you trade us somebody on your roster. Like, that's not going to be how they work that.
They have nothing to offer. They have nothing to offer because none of their people are over enough, and they certainly aren't over enough to a WWE audience. So it can't be a talent exchange thing. I can't really think of anything they could realistically bar for Shinsuke Nakamura services other than, well, it's one of two things. Either WWE allows it to happen because it gets them some goodwill and it doesn't really hurt them in the grand scheme of things, or they go to New Japan and say, hey, we'll give you Nakamura, but you have to stop working with AEW entirely forever and ever and ever, which I don't think they'd go for.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and like, nothing stands out to me as far as like people who I could imagine that they would want to like borrow. Like, they're not going to go, well, we'll give you Nakamura for this big Hiroshi Tanahashi match, and can you send us Sonata for a one shot? No, they're not going to. And they're not going to ask for TMDK to come back, or for something with Evil or whatever. Nothing stands out to me at all. Well, and
yeah, the only thing I think they could offer, sorry to cut off, but like the only thing I think they could offer is to have a Tanahashi match prior to Wrestle Kingdom, and then get Tanahashi to come over to WWE to have a match before his Wrestle Kingdom show. So like maybe on the
like Saturday night's main event or something.
Yeah, there's like Cena's final show. He makes an appearance on that and has a match on that show or something.
It's confirmed. He's his final opponent.
I don't know if they'd be able to get Tanahashi for the whole tournament, but like maybe that's allowable. But that'd be the only kind of fair exchange with anybody of real star value to appear.
Well, let's talk about that tournament, because that is one of the main topics that has happened this week. On Monday Night Raw, they did announce It's going to be called The Last Time Is Now tournament. And they are doing they announced this at Saturday night's main event, but they clarified a little bit more on Monday Night Raw. It's 16 men, and they are milking this in a way that annoys the hell out of me.
Yep. No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Oh,
I hate this.
Yeah. They decided to go, we're going to announce at Saturday night's main event, there will be a 16-man tournament. And then on Raw, they go, and we're going to announce 4 of those 16 people, and 4 more will be announced on SmackDown tonight. It's like, God damn it. You're going to wait and drag this out the way that you did with the Stephanie Vaquer and Io Sky. What are we doing with the Naomi thing? Which shows me that either they are so like, we need to drag this out because we don't have anything and we need to like sort out, the final details about what we're going to do. Or they're thinking we need to drag this out because we have nothing else to talk about. And this will be one of the only talking points. So we don't want to front load everything and just announce it all at the same time. Either way, they're coming at this from the angle of it'll be beneficial for us to not say everything and we need to milk it for as long as we can. And I am never really a fan of that. And we know only 4 people so far. It's going to be Rusev against Damian Priest and Shinsuke Nakamura against Sheamus on next week's episode of Raw. Like I said, 4 more people are going to be announced on SmackDown tonight, which implies that they're going to wait until next week's Raw to announce the last 4 for another part of the bracket, and then they'll wait until next week's SmackDown to announce the other final 4 out of everybody. And that this is just
people on NXT to say, hey, the NXT people that we said would be in it are going to be in it.
They didn't. They just had Ava in a really poorly written segment, which is not all that surprising. But the way that they did the NXT segment, and we'll come around to it when we talk about NXT itself, she just ended the conversation with a completely different conversation by going, and I need to figure out this NXT shit. Like, it's just go away. I have other shit to do, and I'll tell you about it another time. Really dumb. So, a lot with it. Yeah, I mean, that happens way more often than it should. And we don't know who any of the NXT people are going to be, and we don't know who the people that are outside of the company are going to be. But they are in a spot where I am kind of anticipating that they're going to announce them on the SmackDown and Raw side of things and just be like Nick Aldis will come out tonight and go, and the first 2 matches that I'm going to announce are going to be Aleister Black against Trick Williams and so-and-so against whatever. That match isn't happening. It's just the first 2 names I thought of. I don't think that they're going to announce anything on NXT itself. But I felt so deflated with after writing up an article about who would be the 16 people and then going through and talking about this on podcast things and all. And like, really kind of being like, who would be the best options? And then I see it's Rusev, Damian Priest, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Sheamus. And I'm like, fuck.
Now, to be fair, we did say 3 of those 4 names.
We did, but not from our own choices. It was mostly because they had already put the graphics up. So it's like they showed Rusev in the graphics, and then they showed Shinsuke Nakamura or Sheamus or whatever. And like, I wouldn't have picked most of them. I probably would have picked Rusev and Sheamus to be in there. I don't think I would have picked Nakamura and Priest. And I'm a fan of them, but I don't think I would have put them in there. And then when I look at the pairings of this, I'm like, all right, well, if Rusev beats Priest, I'm rooting for somebody to beat Rusev or Priest. If Sheamus fights Nakamura, I'm rooting for somebody to beat one of those 2 either. I don't want any one of these 4 to be the final opponent. And I wanted at least something interesting. If you're going to make 4 separate announcements, I think the 4 interesting people should be spread out between those. And if they don't have 4 interesting people, that is already making this a neutered tournament to me. Because I don't care if it's like, say, like The Miz should be in this tournament. He shouldn't win it, but he should be in the tournament. And if they end up going, and the first match I'm going to announce is The Miz against Johnny Gargano, I'll be like, okay, I like both of those guys, but it doesn't matter. Who is actually in contention to win this? And I'm assuming that Gunther is going to be revealed next week on Raw. I'm assuming that whoever the outsider is, maybe they'll announce one of them, but like, man, I kind of wanted to hear like a Matt Cardona name, or, you know, if they brought in
to Ava, though.
Hmm?
They might still leave that to Ava, since Ava's already got history being like, yeah, I booked TNA people anyway, so Matt Cardona's in the tournament.
The fact that she didn't say a single thing makes me think that they're not. I guess we'll talk about it now kind of in that mix, but like, there was a backstage segment in NXT. And this is how I wrote this out on e-wrestling news. So this was like as verbatim as I could get it, to where I was like, okay, this is kind of all over the place. Sol Ruka had came out and said she wants a match against Blake Monroe at Gold Rush. And Ava said, you're doing really well with your recovery, but you have about a month left, which implies you can't. But I'm going to leave it alone, and we're going to figure that out, and we're going to talk about nothing as an alternative. Just, you know, how whatever. And Zarya was standing there, and she's like, oh, that's great. I can win the speed title at the same time, which implies that Blake Monroe is having that match with Sol Ruka. Poorly written. And then JC Jane comes up with Fatal Influence, and she's like, yeah, well, I want my rematch against Tatum Paxley. And Fallon Henley's like, yeah, but I'm going to win the speed title. And then Ava goes, leave my office. I need to talk to Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce about the tournament. So fucking poorly written. But that was all she had said, was just like, I can't even confirm anything about NXT, and I got to go talk to the Raw and SmackDown people about something else. And then later on, they confirmed about half of those matches, and the other half are up in the air. So WWE doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And it shouldn't be surprising, considering how much they don't know what they're doing as it is. But, you know, and we're talking about a company that, I mean, I'll speak from my own personal experience, that I put out an application for their script supervisor job, and then, you know, a couple weeks later they got rid of the job. So it was like, you know, we need somebody to help with our scripts. You know what? That's going to be a problem for people to understand our continuity and figure out what the fuck we're doing. Baffles me that the company is like that. But the 4 people announced, Rusev, Sheamus, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Damian Priest, I don't think it changes a single thing. And that's part of what I'm so bored about, because they didn't announce anybody that would have made me second guess Gunther winning this. And now I'm just like, all right, well, let's wait until SmackDown and hear the announcement of the next 4 people, and if any of them are going to be interesting or not. Womp womp.
Yeah, go check out the Darkcast here. Check out our podcast. Listen to me explain why I think it should be Carmelo Hayes or Javon Evans or Obafemi, and why we probably shouldn't have a guy who's only 10 years younger than Cena. Now, granted, Gunther is younger, but he does not need the push of beating John Cena. It's a fun statistic to say, in the same year I retired Goldberg and John Cena. But Gunther's made. Make someone else. Those are my thoughts.
I would make the argument about why you might as well do it with someone like Gunther, because fundamentally, Gunther is not made. Because Gunther isn't a star. Gunther's just a guy. He's like, a higher level guy than some of like a Grayson Waller or a Carmelo Hayes or Austin Theory, but he is just a guy. And that's because they just don't have stars at the level of Cena, and they haven't had one at the level of Cena, since Cena was at his peak. And, this is going to be the real big transition point for WWE. Probably him and Randy Orton, when they both hang up their boots, that's kind of it. Like, you've got no one you can lean on anymore. You've got no Orton, got no Cena, got no Triple H, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. You've got no one that you can lean on anymore for actually, like, in-ring one-off matches. So then you're left with who you have, and we always talk about the aging male roster, because eventually you'll lose Cody, eventually you'll lose Punk. Like, who else? Who's next? And I just don't think that, just based on what I've seen, especially recently, and how they've like absolutely horribly handled this final year of John Cena's career, just in terms of just overall booking and ridding any excitement and fun out of it. Just like, if they were to give it to a younger guy like an Obafemi or a Carmelo Hayes, someone that you really could give a springboard to by giving the victory, they just wouldn't capitalize on it. They'd win the match, and then they'd lose at the Royal Rumble, and then they'd be in some kind of mid-card United States title match at WrestleMania or something, and you probably never... And, commentary would always bring up about the fact that, he's the guy that retired John Cena, as he loses the Money in the Bank ladder match and never gets a push to the world title. And, yeah, that's just how I would see it going. So, in theory, you should be giving it to a young guy that you have like real sights on. We really can elevate this guy, but I think that just giving someone like the final win over Cena, it's just not enough. You have to build upon it, and that's always the issue. Is I don't trust them to build upon it. They had the great moment this year of John Cena turning heel and everyone getting excited about it, and they didn't build on it. Like, you could have Obafemi beat John Cena, then you got to build on it. You always need a follow up. You need to know what's coming next. What's the plan? If he beats John Cena, then what next? Does he win the Intercontinental title straight away? Are we building him up? Do we give him an undefeated streak? Is he going for the world title? When does he become the world champion? Like, you have to have a plan for whoever's going to be the one to beat Cena. So you might as well just give it to someone like Gunther, who you already have well established, because, okay, it's just another feather in his cap. It's just another thing that you can talk about in his when he cuts promos talking about how great he is. He can talk about how he retired Goldberg and John Cena, and then that's like, that's just his arc, essentially. His gimmick is retiring people. It could be the case that he has the match with Brock at WrestleMania, and that's Brock's retirement match, and then he says that he's retired Goldberg, John Cena, and Brock Lesnar, and then you're building up this whole retirement gimmick for him. So that's kind of like, he is the guy who gets rid of your favourites, essentially, and gets rid of your the stars from history. He's a legend killer. Yeah, essentially, yeah. And then he killed Randy Orton as well, and then that's the end of Randy Orton's career. So it's like, you might as well tell that story with him, because you have an inbuilt thing with Goldberg. So, as I say, Robbie's right in theory, but it wouldn't work in practice, because this is a company that just can't capitalise on things, or doesn't plan ahead enough to take advantage of that situation.
You heard it first here. Austin Theory, Austin Practice, not the same thing.
See, but I think everything Callum said is true. But I think even the example of Gunther is a great example of, this company doesn't make stars. It's crazy to me that Callum is saying Gunther's just a guy, not because he's wrong, but because look at his resume. Like 85% of his tenure, he's been a champion in this company. He's longest reigning IC champion of all time, 2-time world champion, Royal Rumble record holder. Like,
NXT UK held that belt like forever.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you can't establish Gunther with what you already have, you have failed. And giving him the John Cena feather in his cap is going to add to that legacy, but it'll actually switch over when people stop saying, yeah, but he's no Undertaker. Just because Undertaker had the benefit of being around during what was perceived as a prosperous time for the company, and not in the everything is a niche market era of today. And I don't know, like, I kind of feel like there's no good answer here because, as Callum said, they fumbled this year so badly that nothing's really going to save it. Honestly, it's literally going to be John maybe gets to face down his opponent if the guy wins at Survivor Series. Other than that, it's just going to be built on, hey, don't forget, on December 13th, John Cena's wrestling for the last time. Make sure you tune into that. Which is lame. Like, it's fucking lame. That's my problem with all of this. It's lame. It's boring. It's not interesting.
The sad thing about it as well.
In our Discord, Gilly Zane put out a picture. I don't know who was the original source for it, but apparently people are calling this the Ruthless Depression era. I like that.
The best is that if they decide to board on paper,
you might need to repeat yourself, Callum. Your internet connection's making you a transformer.
I can see from
yeah, we still can't really hear what you're saying.
I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna be quiet then.
Let's see. We might be able to hear you better, a little bit better now that you said you'll be quiet, because I could hear that at least.
I'll try. But they did decide to go with the brave move of going with Femi or Kameh's. They just have Cena beat him in their final match.
Yeah, and that's another whole disappointing thing. I don't know. I think the problem they have is, like, Callum brought up a good point of, hey, Cena, now you're really in the doldrums. You can't rely on somebody. But you're wrong, because they're just going to fucking slot Roman in that spot. And then Roman will wrestle once a year or once every other year and be used as the John Cena. Because they don't know how to fucking just make new stars. You have so many hours of TV. Make a new star. I'm not going to keep going because we do this every week. But it drives me absolutely insane as somebody who grew up in a time where it was like stars were being made, or at least attempted to be made, constantly. Now it's just like, well, maybe one day they'll get to be at the Randy Orton level if they stick around for 20 years. Maybe we'll give them the world title eventually.
Let's backtrack to Monday Night Raw a little bit more, talk about some of the other things that they had said and done. One of them being Logan Paul popped back up. Seemed like he had the slightest bit of a babyface turn, which, of course, when that happened, I was just like, everybody wait until the end of the episode. He's not turning babyface. It's not happening. And lo and behold, he doesn't. And he, starts off the night kind of helping out CM Punk in fighting with everybody that's, setting up. It's the same story every single week. CM Punk comes out there, the Vision, Jey Uso, blah, blah, blah. Ends up being a double count out. Logan Paul turns on CM Punk, hits him with the brass knuckles, and surrenders them to Paul Heyman. The implication being, of course, Logan Paul is joining the War Games match, and we got Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Logan Paul, and then question marks. Rollins, of course, not in the mix. They haven't confirmed anybody else. I'm assuming Brock Lesnar is one of them, but that's not necessarily a guarantee. And then, I don't know, the other person could be Drew McIntyre, or it could end up being Austin Theory, it could end up being whoever, I don't know. Logan Paul is one of those guys that, like, we've said it a million times, I don't like Logan Paul for a lot of different reasons, but the guy, if you took the Logan Paul character and the Logan Paul person and you separated them, Logan Paul, the professional wrestler, a lot of fun. And I'm sure he'll be a fun element to War Games. It just sucks that I can't be happy that it's him because he's him. And it'll be the same when it comes to Brock Lesnar of like, yeah, Brock can be fun, but goddamn it, he's Brock, and I don't like that. Sure, why not? Logan Paul gives a name, and it's fine of a replacement as you could possibly assume him.
Yeah, I don't love this. Like, we had watched the 95 War Games and remarked on the power of that team, but I think we might be heading towards a super team where it's Punk, Jay, Roman, Cena, and Cody, which is as stacked babyface side as you'll ever get. But I don't know, I don't love this because it feels like you're just doing it to do it. And that's not what War Games should be. You're falling into that same trap of, well, we have to do Hell in a Cell because it's October. But we'll see how it goes.
Some of the other things that happened on the episode of Raw. I am very suspicious that Nikki Bella is going to turn heel very soon. She lost the tag team match with Stephanie Vaquera to Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez, which Raquel then is now the number one contender, and she's going to have her match next week. So I'm assuming Stephanie beats Raquel, and then Nikki celebrates with her, and then, hits her from behind.
Do you think she'll say that she wished Stephanie died in the womb?
She seems to be like, I'm really doing great stuff now and all. And it's like, oh, sure you are.
I did read a quote on Twitter that said she found the roster to be surprised when she tells them that like Danielson gives her advice and stuff to watch. And I'm like, isn't this the group of women who grew up watching Total Divas? Are you surprised that Daniel Bryan talks to Nikki Bella? Like, what?
Like, he should. They are in the same family together. But Penta, El Grande Americano, they had a whole thing after that with Dom and Rey Mysterio returning and, basically being like, you're not the king of the luchadors. So we're going to get something down the line between Rey and his son Dom. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but I'm assuming that it's the AAA Mega Championship and it's that whatever. What the fuck is the name of it? Now I'm going to look it up because I need to get the name right.
I would almost prefer
Guerra the Titans. I don't know if that's even pronounced correctly, but that's December 20th.
I would almost prefer hair versus mask, and maybe Dom can lose the title prior to, because I would like to see something really special with like a hair versus mask and Dom gets shaved, or maybe even Rey retires and Dom takes his mask. If that happens, it won't be a AAA, but maybe that could happen. Either way, I like this angle. I think unfortunately Rey is only really, really good now when he works with Dom. But Dom is so much more confident today than he was leading into WrestleMania 39, and it was a fun watch.
Becky had her whole crash out moment talking about dragging out the Maxine Dupree match. Kabuki Warriors beat Bayley and Lyra. They are now number one contenders de facto for the women's tag titles. So another implication going on there that probably Asuka and Kairi on one side of the War Games. I'm assuming with Roxanne and Raquel, and then I guess Nia, because Nia's doing this whole thing with Bliss and Flair. If you got Bliss and Flair, and then I don't know if it's Bayley, Lyra, Io, Rhea. Yeah, there's a handful of other people that they can throw in there, but we'll probably get some more information on that on SmackDown tonight. AJ Styles and Dragon Lee retain the tag titles over the Judgment Day, and a little bit of a tease of the Jey Uso turn ends up not happening. So for 2.5 hour episode of Raw, that's one of those shows again that you could have boiled that down to 2 hours and it would have been a little bit better, but they moved some stories along. Sure, why not? NXT was a bit of a mess this week, and it's like I don't know what they're going for with some of the stuff that they're doing right now. It's very weird to me that NXT is promoting Gold Rush And it's a 2-week thing that's in Madison Square Garden on the 18th and the 25th. And they keep going like, yeah, that's Gold Rush. That's where all these titles are being defended. And then every one of these titles is being defended prior to that, too. It's really diluting the hell out of it. Because they've done, like, between this week and last week, they've had like 4 championship matches already. And we're going to get more next week, too, prior to this whole thing. So they're all over the place. They had a 6-woman tag. Fatal Influence won because you got to set up the whole, eventual thing, JC Jane and Tatum Paxley, which they didn't confirm, despite the fact that it's like, obviously that's what they're going to do. But they had all these other stupid segments where, like, for some reason, El Grande Americano has a match with Josh Briggs. Why does Josh Briggs get thrown into this? He's got a feud going on with Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne. Miles Bourne, by the way, spends the episode saying, hey, Ricky Saints, leave a little bit of Trick Williams for me. Dude, aren't you trying to fight Josh Briggs? And then Tavion Heights costs Briggs the match against El Grande Americano, who has Rayo and Bravo ringside and Jasper Troy watching. So that's just a menagerie of heels. And then the babyface comes in and does the illegal thing. I don't know where they're going with that. I don't know why that was how they had to do this. It very easily could have been so many other different ways to tell that story in a more efficient way. Kalani Jordan then cuts a promo where she talks about how the TNA locker room and the NXT locker room hate her. And she doubles down on she's a heel now. It took them about 8 months to do this, but they've been teasing Kalani Jordan turning heel for like the entirety of this year. And every time that she does something where she acts like a complete bitch, they backtrack about like 2 weeks later and they end up having her against somebody like a Lash Legend and make her seem like more of a bitch. Lash is the other one that they've gone back and forth with over and over again. And Jada Parker, they do it too. The 3 of them are like, they could not figure out who they wanted to be a heel and who they wanted to be a face out of them. Seems like they're dead set now on Jordan being a heel. And credit to where the story is for that. She at least calls out something that makes a little bit of sense. She says, you cheer for Dom when he wins the AAA title by cheating. You cheer for Cody when he retains his title at Saturday Night's Main Event by cheating. But I cheat and you boo me. Okay, I like that. But then she goes, and you're mad at Lola Vice for going to AAA. And it's like, you're happy for Lola Vice to go to AAA and you're mad at me for going to TNA. I don't know about that. That doesn't really work the same. And then that's partially to build up Kendall Gray, who is doing a whole thing with Ren Sinclair so that Tyra May Steele can have a match. And then they can announce that Jordan Grace is going to be in a triple threat with Lei Ying Lee to challenge Kalani Jordan for the title by proxy of Santino because Ava can't book it, even though one of them is an NXT talent. Fucking mess, man. It's just like, if you try to map this out, it'd be one of those things that when you see on TV shows where somebody has like the red string on like the wall and it's like, and he went to 3rd Street and that's where the whatever is and all. And it's like, this is not that complicated and you're overcomplicating the hell out of it. I think that they think the more shit that they do, the more complicated equals the more interesting. And instead it just dilutes the hell out of it, to, use that phrase. It's like the phrase I'm using, I guess, on this episode more than anything. I'm not a fan of it. I think that they could tighten this up a lot. Having said all that, I don't know if you guys have any reactions to the mess of like, if you're like, okay, I can't even keep track of what you're saying,
So what I will say is I'm currently on hiatus from watching NXT. But what that does sound like to me is shit's constantly moving. I wish it made more sense, but I do like my wrestling shows where people aren't constrained to boxes where they can only interact with their current rival. I wish some of it made a little more sense, like Miles Bourne, for example, just being like, hey, fuck Josh Briggs, and by the way, Ricky Saints, I want to beat up Trick Williams too. Could you save him for me? That doesn't make as much sense. But I did enjoy the Kalani promo, mostly because she's on her mandatory heel run. It must be like a curriculum in school. Like, okay, you have to take a couple of credits of being a heel before we can send you up. Because this is what they do. They take these plucky, adorable baby faces like Roxanne and Kalani, and they're like, well, you have to be a heel. They took a massive baby face like Braun Breaker, and they were like, I don't care how boring it is, you gotta be a heel. Yeah, so she's just on her mandatory heel run. At least some of it makes sense. Like, you know, she's gonna be like, "Oh, you cheer for Jada Parker and Lola Vice and their asses, but you won't cheer me for being a great athlete." You know, I thought it was a solid promo for her for where she's at. But yeah, a lot of it's just a mess, and I can't help but laugh at the idea of Jordan Grace wins TNA Knockouts title. Like, if they do that, I might have to throw in the towel on Jordan personally. I think Jordan's the best, but if they do that, then I see the trajectory they're going, and I don't like that.
I don't really have like much to add because I kind of glazed over when you started talking about NXT. So like, I heard words and heard names, and then none of it went in. So,
well, the speed tournament is another thing that'll win you over. Their idea of this speed tournament is very much, I guess, they want to make everything speed related just very quick. And, you know, we now have 2 different tournaments in the NXT side of things that show this. They want a tournament that is 3 matches. That's not a tournament. And Zarya beats Ren Sinclair because out of all the people to beat, why pair her up with Ren Sinclair? And just, you know, it seems like they just picked a random person, and that sucks. And Fallon Henley is going to go up against Danny Sikelski, who was the winner of the 2nd season of WWE LFG. And she's gotten a new ring name. They trademarked Skylar Raye, SKYLAR RAYE. Is that not the name of a singer, but just slightly different?
I wouldn't know. I'm surprised you would know.
I'm pretty sure that there's a Skylar Raye that's like RAE or something.
I'm sorely tempted to play an episode, play the game. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very generic name. Yeah, I'm not seeing. So there's a male music artist, Skylar Raye, but it's Skylar with an E and Ray with an RAY.
No, there is. I was just looking it up now. Skylar Raye, musician and singer. It's literally SKYLAR, so the same, and then RAE. So they just put an extra Y in there. Some, I guess, you know, somebody from TikTok and whatever, you know, one of those types, I guess. But yeah, musician and singer named Skylar Raye, and you're going to go Skylar Raye and just add a Y into there. Between the like trademark shit that they've had before where there's been other things, I would think that would be the type of thing that you'd be like, oh my God, you're going to have a blonde girl named Skylar Raye, and you're going to have another blonde girl named Skylar Raye. Maybe they should figure out another name, especially because they had already previously trademarked Danny Ray. So why is it Skylar now? And I don't know. I could see that. I could very well see that changing because, you know, then again, this is a company that for some reason, out of all the names that they decided to go with, Sol Ruka's real name is being used essentially as referee Jessica Carr's nickname on Evolve. And it's like, yeah, it's different if it's like, okay, it's Becky, where there could be, you know, tons and tons of Beckys, but Sol Ruka's real name is Calix. and Calyx.
Oh, that's
and
weird.
Jessica Carr's real name, ring name in Evolve is Calyx. Kaylyx. So a name like Calyx ends up being like, let's repurpose that for a different person. I don't know what they're doing here, but I don't like it. Skylar Raye seems like a really, I'm going to be Jay-Z, but I'm going to be Jaez instead of Jay. Like, come on. Don't start doing that. But she's not winning. They're not going to give this Skylar Raye the win over Fallon Henley, especially when they've already announced basically that it's going to be Zarya versus Fallon Henley. So it defeated the purpose of even doing the match next week. When you advertise, I'm going to beat the other person that has never been competing on this show, and we're clearly setting up this match instead. I don't get why they do that and just neuter themselves. I'm going to use the word neuter again. That's another word that I'm using a lot in this podcast. They cut themselves at the feet before they even get a chance to start walking. And not a fan of that. I already mentioned the whole GM talk and everything. And here's another dumb thing that happened on NXT this week. Izzy Dame and Tatum Paxley were in a backstage segment, and Izzy Dame's like, you got to stop making decisions based off your emotions. And Paxley's like, yeah, that's right. But I've got, quote, one more thing that I need to do before I feel satisfied. And guess how they're announcing that for next week? Tatum Paxley will be there live.
Well, they can't announce that Tatum Paxley will satisfy herself. That's not appropriate.
Maybe announce what she needs to do with the one more thing. Or even just what's her plan for next week or something. But they're just like, hey, the champion that's there every single week, she's going to be there live. It's a live show, and she's there every week. What the hell? And this whole thing ends with the Muy Grande Championship celebration, because apparently over the past few days, Ethan Page and Chelsea Green won the AAA Mixed Tag Team titles, which ends up being a vessel for Thea Hale and Joe Hendry to be out there and to have their whole, say his name and they appear and pop out of the cake. And, we're going to get that at Gold Rush. So at least they're using Thea Hale. That's something.
Yeah, attaching her to a gimmick that shelf life is already becoming close to its expiry date. That's kind of a good sign for her.
It's better than what they were doing the previous past couple of months, where she just literally didn't exist. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a low bar.
Yeah,
it's good.
Well, the best part about this was that there was a digital exclusive where Chelsea goes, I have never been creamed on like this, which Matt Cardona had a lot of fun with on the internet. So, shout out to Chelsea doing the Lord's work. And I'm already over this Joe Hendry thing.
You are over Joe Hendry.
I mean, yeah, I am, because WWE is now taking the long route with something that was over as hell last year when they had the man in main events of pay-per-views. Now they're taking they're doing the Jordan Grace. Like what are we doing here?
Well, they do what they always do. They take a joke and they beat it into the ground, because now basically his entire shtick is they just will say his name in just the most random circumstances. He'll jump up from trash cans or anything along those lines, or burst through walls, and it's like, it's like eventually either the bell has to ring, or he has to do something that's more substantial than just, or even just do the singing stuff, or do like more creative things other than he's literally just become catchphrase, appearance, and that's it. He's not even like doing some of the other stuff that got him over, like the more concert-y stuff. Like, he's doing that every now and again, but he's not doing it with the same consistency that he would do it on the indies. So they've distilled him down to his catchphrase, and that's going to be the death of him. Well, I say it's going to be the death of him. It's going to necessitate a heel turn in 6 months' time, which will not be successful. It's like, I was tired of all of you saying my... Yeah, I was going to say, I was so tired. I was tired. I became your performing puppet, just saying my name, and I appeared. Well, no more. And that's going to be like the whole basis of his heel turn. All you people.
Now, when you say my name, it'll be in fear. Grr.
So anyway, that's NXT. The AEW side of things. We'll toss out one more thing. Speaking of Skylar Raye with the name, Zelina Vega is not Zelina Vega anymore. Apparently, she's just Zelina. And if that's not another indicator of Aleister Black and Zelina are just replacing Karrion Kross and Scarlett after that entrance from last week, and then let's basically do the exact same gimmick that's going on with them, but then we're also going to switch the girl to only have her first name. That's like, are you purposely doing that to say fuck you to Karrion Kross and Scarlett? Seems a little weird. Why, after all this time, is she just Zelina?
I think it's just because the I mean, it could be for the Cross and Scarlett Bordeaux thing. I can't say for certain, but I think it's probably more likely just because her surname's different to Black's, and so they're just calling her Zelina now. So because they're acknowledging their married status on TV.
Yeah, I don't think this one's that deep, but I will give them credit because people want to believe that this entire thing is being done in spite. It's put Cross and Scarlett back in the mouths of wrestling fans again, so that's fun for them. I'm not gonna say that. I can't say for certain that it isn't in spite, but they had nothing to spite. They didn't use the couple. What are you spiting? Go ahead, Callum. Were you gonna say something?
I say, like, it's not like there's been a mass movement since Cross left that they're trying to be like, oh well, fuck you, we're just gonna go with Black and Zelina, and they're just gonna take your gimmick. It's like, yeah, I mean, any quote unquote movement that happened after they got released died in a week. So, and now they're pretty much invisible anywhere, just doing stuff on the independent circuit. I doubt that they're still butthurt about that.
The weird thing is, the one that gave me pause was that Black did an interview where he was like, they decided to put us together after seeing the success of putting other married couples together in this way. And it's like, yes, WWE is doing that a lot right now where, hey, if you're married on TV, hey, just be together. If you're married in real life, just be together on TV. But I can't imagine it's that deep. I think it's just, hey, Aleister Black is back. I'm not doing anything. Can you put me with my husband? I think it was more that than anything else.
It is very strange how things work out to be like, like they're doing the same entrance basically as Cross and Scarlett. And then it becomes, now it's like, you can't call her Scarlett Bordeaux. She has to be Scarlett. Now she's not Zelina Vega. She's Zelina. It's like, all right, you're either unintentionally going down that rabbit hole and becoming like, finding yourself doing the same thing, or you are intentionally doing it. I don't know. We'll see. If Aleister Black comes out with a dumb fucking red mask and looks like a gimp like Karrion Kross, then we know for a fact it's not a coincidence. Then it's just a plan. Or if he starts doing the I'm going to corrupt you and make you a heel thing, then it'll be, we're just carrying the same story. Karrion Kross. Carrying the same story. That'll be the same.
Well, that's his cross to bear.
Oh my God, he's starting to cut promos about that. Wouldn't shock me, to be honest. Well, let's round things out with AEW Dynamite. And that show started off with a segment between Samoa Joe and Tony Schiavone. There was something prior to the show, but they got back to that a little bit later, and we'll wait and talk about that in a bit. But Joe, understandably pissed about what Tony Schiavone and Hangman Adam Page did to make a fool of him. in a cool segment from from Friday night. That basically is a typical WWE segment. You start off with a promo and it leads to the main event match, and here's the difference of that. And the difference was, okay, well, now it's for the trios titles. So I kind of assumed going into it that the Ops were going to win anyway, just because Kingston and Hook could lose, and you want to try to make Joe look like it's a viable option that he is going to beat Hangman if you're going to try to milk a second match out of that. And, that ends up happening. Hobbs makes,
made Hook tap out.
Hook tapped out,
rack.
To the torture rack. And then,
it actually did a better job of... It did a better job of building Hobbs up than it did Joe.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting.
They also, because they had, no, we're going to the main event, but in the main event they had Hobbs puts Hangman through a table, basically taking him out of the match, and then getting the victory as well. And they're going to do a Hangman versus Hobbs street fight next week to help build up for the Full Gear show, or Full Scale anyway, should I say? And yeah, I'm actually like a little bit annoyed that they're doing that match, because I think they should save Hobbs to have the match at World's End against Hangman, because it just feels like a natural. He'll beat Joe, but then you've got a young guy in the Ops that could step up and extend it out another bit, but it's just a different match with a different person, and it's a younger guy that hasn't really been given that kind of opportunity. I mean, maybe they still do it. I still think there's a potential that because it's Full Scale Anywhere and you can have interference, get people involved, that they just have Hobbs beat Page. And then, he beats Joe, but then there's natural, he's beaten the world champion, so he's going to have a shot against him at either a big episode of Dynamite or at World's End. So they could go down that route. I just hope that it's not a case of Page just going to beat Hobbs. It probably will be a case of just Page just beats Hobbs and then beats Joe, but I'd rather they tried something a little bit different to help build up Hobbs to, a main event level.
That's where I kind of would wish that if they were going to go and do that, maybe Hobbs should have been the opponent for Full Gear and not just do a second Joe match. But, it is what it is. But Claudio beats Orange Cassidy as one of the matches to try to set up the advantage situation. I thought that this was a little bit interesting too, that they went with they did the 2 men's matches and then they did the 1 women's match, and I was confused about this ahead of time, and this is my fault more than anything else, but when they had announced these advantage things, I thought that all the matches were happening on Dynamite. And I had written out ahead of time, like, okay, well, they're going to have these 6 matches because they're clearly not going to not have the other matches. And I was like, Harley Cameron's going to work twice? That's kind of strange. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so it's going to be the 4 matches, and then the 2, if they need to have them, the 2 other matches will be at Collision. And then it's like, okay, no, actually, the only one of the women's matches are happening. I thought that was a little bit strange, that they didn't have the other match for the women's thing, but...
Well, they already had a women's match. They already had another women's match on the show because they had one of the women's tournament tag matches on the show. So, and they're never going to do 3 women's matches on one Dynamite.
I mean, they could.
I'm saying that sarcastically because it's just a thing. Like, we were lucky enough to have 2 women's matches on the Dynamite itself, but I think that I like the fact that they're doing this, even though I personally don't mind the whole coin flip excuse thing. To just have that, you don't need to build up towards it. I think it at least makes the matches that are happening this week on both Dynamite and Collision, some of the matches have got stakes attached to them. Like, there's a real reason for them to happen. Like, you're going to do this best of 3 series for both the men's and the women's to, just add a bit more stakes and intrigue into what's going to happen on both Dynamite and Collision. And, I mean, realistically, because this is I don't want a situation where they feel like they have to have one of the babyface teams win the advantage to do something different between 2. No, we've discussed this ad nauseum. There's only one way to do a War Games or Blood and Guts match, and that is the heel team has the advantage. You can't do it any other way unless you're doing some kind of silly gimmicky thing like the Tegan Nox thing, which you can do. But I think if you do that, especially in the women's match, it just feels like you're just copying that. So maybe just go with the heel team because it's just easier that way. I think they've built up especially the women's side, they've built that up that it's pretty obviously going to be the heel side winning, because I think the final match is the Megan Bain Harley Cameron match. I think is the final one. So if that's the case, then yeah, Harley's not beating Megan Bain.
No, it's wasn't it Megan Bain? Isn't Megan Bain against somebody else?
Oh no, Megan Bain fought Mina Shikara on this one. Sorry, I got that wrong. But it's whoever Harley Cameron's going to be facing. I think is, I think it's like it's Tekla. I think it's Harley Cameron Tekla is the final one. So Tekla's not going to lose that one to Harley.
Right.
So yeah.
But then the last one for the men is Moxley and Roderick Strong too. So it's like you should go realistically Moxley. And
yeah, Moxley will win that one, yeah.
You know, because Darby Allin beats Daniel Garcia, so that's like evens that up. And, you know, Jamie Hayter most likely wins to even that up and set that up, you know.
I think it's obviously, or it made it more obvious that it's going to be Moxley with the Roderick Strong, because if you wanted to make it interesting, it should have been Kyle O'Reilly. Because they've been feuding recently, so you could have really added a bit more jeopardy to that by making it Kyle O'Reilly. But I guess if the whole purpose of this Blood and Guts, or at least part of this purpose of Blood and Guts, is to have Kyle O'Reilly be the one to force Jon Moxley to tap out, that must be what they're doing. They haven't just been doing these. You'd like to think anyway. Again, I'm not going to say with any real certainty, but I have more faith in AEW's like booking when it comes to this than WWE's. But I don't think they've just done those recent matches between Kyle O'Reilly and Jon Moxley to have inconclusive finishes just for the sake of it. I think that that must be building into the finish of this match, that O'Reilly's going to be the one that forces Moxley to tap out or give up.
See, I hate that we're in a spot, and this is more of a reason to talk again about, which we don't need to really go into, but this is why War Games should not be every November. Because, like, right now we're going to get the same exact match on both AEW and WWE within, like, a week span.
Yeah.
That sucks.
They shouldn't be doing, like, the multiple things, but in this instance, it's a WWE problem, because they obviously have tied themselves to Survivor Series being, like, the show where they do the War Games match, whereas AEW, they typically have done previous War Games in spring or summer. They've moved this one to November instead. So they're actually doing, AEW at least have built it so it's more natural that these ones done. They've done it the right way, where they come up when they need to do it.
I mean, I'd make the argument this is AEW counter programming in some ways the War Games thing, because they know that War Games is happening in November, and then I don't think that they actively said let's push that until November to offset it, but they are doing it ahead of time, and they did have months where they could have done any of these, because there was nothing. I don't think there's anything that's different now compared to a month ago that was like they couldn't have done 5-on-5 last month or the month prior. It's mostly been the same 10 people feuding on both sides for the past 3 months.
I agree with that. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, not only that, but they've done a bunch of, here's a 5-on-5 Stadium Stampede, here's one in a cage, but it's a different kind of cage. Like, they could have done this.
Yeah.
I agree that they've probably built it around this because they know that WWE does their ones and have done like a means of counter programming, but I would say that they've still done it in a better way, because at least it's been like built towards this. Like, there has been like months worth of, you know, those two sides fighting each other in different configurations leading into this. Whereas the WWE one is just going to be throwing people that are like singles people that are feuding with each other together in one match. Like, just because it is this time of the year to do a War Games one. So, you know, we'll throw, I don't know, Becky Lynch and the Kabuki Warriors will be teaming up, even though they've not done anything together this entire year. But we're just going to do it because it's the time of year to do a 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 or whatever they're going to do women's match for War Games. Whereas at least in the AEW example, they've timed it to match up with the War Games, but at least they've spent months with all these people feuding with each other.
So more after that was set up with the $1 Million Trios match. They're milking that for just, you know, you're doing the same thing. It's just, let's get another month out of this and stuff. It's not my favorite. there was also, we want to have a 7th match between Mark Briscoe and Kyle Fletcher, but now the stipulation is if Briscoe loses that match, he has to join the Don Callis family. So at least that gives it a little bit more intrigue instead of it just being, okay, Kyle Fletcher can beat Briscoe again, and then that's just going to be, I want an 8th match. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that when we get into our full gear predictions, but I'm kind of assuming at this point Briscoe wins. Yeah.
They can't do him joining the Don Callis family. It just won't work.
Briscoe's going to win here. I think that's a good move because people like Mark Briscoe, but I mentioned this going into Wrestle Dream that I thought he was a standout babyface on that particular show, and that could have been the moment for that move.
Babes of Wrath beat Athena and Mercedes Moné, so they've moved on to the next round of the World Women's Tag Title Tournament that's going on, which we still don't know when it's going to wrap up, but you know, we talked about some different scenarios before, so now it does seem more likely that they will be in the finals, if not the inaugural champions.
Yep.
I now think it's going to be them against Marina and Megan.
Either way, I think they win it all. Whether it's them against Tony and Mina, or whether it's against Megan and Marina, it's going to be, I think, Nightingale and Cameron will win the titles. And also, as a byproduct of this, not that it's going to really matter and it's not going to be where a title change is going to happen, but as a byproduct of Harley Cameron pinning Athena, she's going to fight Athena for the women's Ring of Honor Women's World title on the 20th of November edition of Ring of Honor.
You got a new champion coming in. I highly doubt it.
I highly doubt it. But
and yeah, I mean, everything else we pretty much talked about, except for the other last big topic for us to get into here. Actually, there's one other thing. There's the
FTR and Brodito.
The FTR and Brodito thing, yeah. Making fun of the grandmother. Gravity comes out. Brodito fights. Yeah. So again, we're gonna get to it. We'll get into our full gear things, but FTR is winning those tag belts.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing, though, is something that I did not see being announced because I just can't fathom why the hell they're doing this. Before Dynamite, Tony Schiavone and Tony Khan were on this, Twitter post or whatever, and this video where it's very awkward. Tony Khan's just like looking at the camera while talking to Tony Schiavone. It's very much like, I'm reading my cue card. It is so great to be here, Tony Schiavone, and whatever. And he's talking about how great the national championship was and how he wants to bring the national title to AEW, which, number one, the NWA still has the national title. So
they are bitching. They are so upset at this. And
as look, they should be. Because that's like, that's like saying Tony Khan goes, oh man, I was always a big fan of the, the X Division. So I'm going to create the X Division. And then TNA would be like, fuck you, pal, we're here.
Well, to a certain extent, I think I genuinely want to live in the world where it's funnier that he just didn't know. Because who's watching the NWA? But there's also the weird thing of, I guess they're in a dispute over the Shockwave trademark. Is this a thing? And this is me speculating. Is this a thing to be petty about that? Either way, that's neither here nor there. Okay, I don't know why he felt the need to bring up the NWA National Championship outside of the fact that he just loves wrestling on TBS. But there's nothing stopping them from having the AEW National Championship. It's as a name in and of itself, it's fine.
If you ignore all the other elements.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I guess we'll get there, but there's nothing. I don't understand why everybody's so butthurt, except for the fact that why are you bringing up the NWA National Title when it exists? It exists in a zombified shell, yes, but it exists. It's kind of weird that you're just like, I want to bring the NWA National Title and that kind of legacy to AEW. Sure, because I think, you merge two titles to create the Continental title, or not the unified title. I think you should have something
Well,
that is like a.
remember, the Continental title was created as a means for Eddie Kingston to be a 3-belt champion.
Right, because they wanted to do the Triple Crown deal.
So you start a championship as it's a Triple Crown thing, but we're not going to merge the titles. He's just going to hold 3 titles because we're in this era where we're obsessed with giving champions multiple belts. And we're not going to merge them. He's going to lose each one of them individually, but we're going to keep the Continental Crown is going to be the Continental Championship. And then we're going to take the All Atlantic title and we're going to rename that the International title. And then eventually we're going to have both those titles become the Unified Champion, which I absolutely fucking hate that name. It's so stupid, the Unified Champion, because it should just be unifying the 2 titles. And if you're not unifying the 2 titles, then it's not unified, and then you shouldn't call it that. It's fundamentally, it does not make sense to call it the AEW Unified title, and it's a dumb name even if you continued that going forward. But it's especially dumb going forward to then go, we need to have another 3rd mid-card title because we don't want to just have 2 mid-card titles. And to name it, the international title has whether the international title is part of the unified going forward or not, they have not officially merged it. So you kind of assume that they'll, at some point, they at least have some plans to split it back up. You mean to tell me that they're going to have an international title and a national title? You couldn't name it any fucking thing else? And you need to speed run this to throw the Casino Gauntlet match and crown that champion at this next pay-per-view while you've been waiting for as long as you've been waiting for the ROH Women's World Pure Championship or whatever. And you've got the Women's World Tag Team title tournament going on, and that's being stretched out to a point where you announced that a long time ago compared to this, and that's not, there's not an insight with that. What the hell do they have to rush this for? And why do they need another championship to begin with? And why are you calling it the national? And why didn't you unify the unified title?
Well, let's start here. Belts are cool, right?
I mean, if it ends up looking like the NWA national title, that belt's not going to be cool. That's ugly as shit.
I want a nice medium. I do like the stupid map outline of the states. I just don't think that should be the only thing on the design. But who knows? Maybe he's going to use the Magnum TA style one where it was just like a silver NWA title, which maybe it'll just be a silver AEW title. I don't know. It's too many belts. I don't need to belabor that point because I think everybody knows. It's too many belts. And the naming convention is strange, as evident by MVP, because Benjamin and Lashley are the first to announce for the match. MVP immediately said, AEW International title. Whoops. Okay. I think that you didn't need this when you had a cool belt in the international belt. But let's see what happens here. Casino gauntlets are fun. Wrestling's confusing as it is.
I mean, it definitely is like one belt that's unnecessary. And look, I mean, let's face it, as an overarching thing, every single big promotion has too many belts. WWE has too many, AEW has too many belts, WWE has too many belts, New Japan has too many belts. I don't know where like CMLL and AAA stand, but I imagine that they have plenty of belts as well. TNA, for the size promotion it is, has too many belts. It's like, that is just, but that is just the prop that wrestling is. It's like, you introduce belt because you're trying to inject something fun and interesting, and new title belt is a a surefire way of doing it, or like an easy way of doing it. I think the idea with this national title, from how they described it, is they want it to be some kind of like roaming championship that's like fought about throughout the states, but through through AEW, but also through Ring of Honor, and also into like New Japan in their US territories, and then other US promotions as well. So I think that's the kind of concept behind it. The issue with that being that was the whole concept of the international title before they moved it on to just being a thing on the show. And it was originally like that, because that was when Pac was originally holding it. He was going all over the place and defending it in multiple countries and locations, and then they just gave it to Orange Cassidy, and it just became his like weekly TV title defense thing. Or as good as it was, that was just what it got reduced down to. And then it just became, your standard mid-card title. So, the pattern is there to say this is what they'll do originally with the first champion, and then they'll just revert to type, and it'll just be a title on the TV show that just gets defended every now and again. I don't know what the status is with like the Continental and the International title. I know Don Callis is holding them, but that's a case of maybe he's just holding them to look good. I don't think there hasn't at least been any indication that they're planning on splitting that title and reverting back to the international and continental championship at some point. It seems like they're only focused on the unified title, because it's not like there's been an international title or a continental title match on its own since then.
Well, see, that's where like we go back in time and we can look at WWE and go, oh my God, they're doing the exact same thing. And it's like it's exactly the same thing too. That's the thing that's funny about it. Roman Reigns has the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and he wins the WWE Universal Championship. Or that's the other way around. Whatever the fuck. Point being, he has got one belt.
Champion won the WWE title.
Yeah. Universal wins the WWE title, and then his manager, his bald manager, holds the two championships as they give him a new title that is called the Undisputed Championship. So Kazuchika Okada wins the other championship, and his bald manager holds the two titles as they call him the Unified Champion. It even starts with the letter U. Same thing. And for the entire time that Roman was champion with the two belts, and when Cody was champion, and I belabored this point over and over for the entire year that Cody was champion, they did not update WWE.com. The Superstars page had Cody listed as the Universal and the WWE champion. John Cena wins, and suddenly they wake the fuck up, and they either just then noticed, which is insane if that's what made them notice after an entire year plus of being the champion, 2 years at most, even. Or they then realized that they didn't want to make it an 18-time thing with John Cena, so then they retroactively retconned it. But if you go to allelitewrestling.com right now, it's the same problem, because All Elite Wrestling has their roster page, and they don't update it super frequently about every single little thing. But right now, Kazuchika Okada is listed 3 times on the champions list. He's listed as the Unified Champion, the Continental Champion, and the International Champion, which implies that it's still separate. So either they're in the exact same situation of the bald manager of the Unified instead of Undisputed Champion is holding 2 belts that are not 2 belts anymore, and we don't want to update the roster page, or we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We just don't want to remove any of that yet because that's a decision that's being made. So we're just going to be like, fuck it. You shouldn't care about it until we care about it, and then you should go with whatever we go with, and then you should retroactively not care anyway. That pisses me off so fucking much.
I agree from your perspective, but I would say you are literally the only person that I've ever known that cares about this stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I am, but at the same time, that is a problem, because if these belts matter, people should care. And if they don't care, it doesn't matter. And the whole point of a belt is to be that you should care about it. So if Okada is like, I'm the Unified Champion, which means that I'm the champion of these 2 championships, but those 2 championships don't exist anymore, but at any point I could drop the belts or I could defend both, then the rules don't fucking matter and nothing matters at all.
I think that it's probably just like the latter situation that you define, where it's like that those belts don't exist anymore. They just haven't updated the roster page to reflect the fact that the Continental and the international titles just don't exist anymore. They've both been unified under the Unified Championship.
And for some reason, they don't have the stones to call it the Intercontinental Championship. Or maybe it's a copyright thing, even though clearly Skylar Raye and, the national title and whatever means that people are playing around with copyright stuff.
National.
But maybe they want to call it the Intercontinental and they can't. And then that would be where we go back into what I've talked about a million times before, where like, I wish somebody had the fucking balls. And this doesn't even require balls to do it, but just had the sensibility to ask Tony Khan and go like, you're not just keeping this the fucking unified title, are you? Are you going to name it something? Or is this a thing where like, if you can't do that for a trademark, and then if it is that, and if he would just go, yeah, you know what? Like, I want to name it that, but we're still deliberating about trademarks or something, then just fucking say that and, be honest about it. Like, because the national title, like somebody at some point needs to ask Tony Khan, whether it's like heading into the Full Gear media coverage thing or something, somebody has to go, dude, you've got an international title. Why are you having a national title? And I want to hear his excuse for why he couldn't name it any fucking thing else.
I don't see what the issue of like calling it a national title, in the sense that he can call it whatever he wants, and it's like it's I'm sure there's like multiple promotions out there that have a national title or some sort of equivalent name of the title, in the same way that he could have called it the Intercontinental title because New Japan had an Intercontinental Championship, and I'm sure other promotions have Intercontinental Championships as well. He just probably chose not to because it felt like we're too closely aligned to WWE, and so they have an Intercontinental title, so we can't call it an Intercontinental title. Whereas New Japan has a distance enough to the point where, we can call our titles, we can basically name all our titles, as long as we don't put the word WWE in it, we can name them all the same thing that WWE have, because, WWE have a World Tag titles, AEW have a World Tag titles, but that's kind of like the regular nomenclature. But I think they've just gone with the national one because even though it exists from an NWA perspective, I think Tony Khan sees AEW as the replacement or as the spiritual successor of the NWA, because the current iteration of the NWA sucks and is like basically a Walking Dead promotion. And so he probably sees like, we're on TBS, which was the old home of like NWA and WCW and all of that stuff. So we're actually more NWA than the NWA is. So we should have the national title because we're actually, we're what the NWA has turned into, whereas rather than the husk that's still carrying around dragging like 100 people to their shows every like couple of months.
But that's where I still just go like, somebody needs to ask him, then what's with the international title? Do you really honestly plan on splitting that and having an international and a national, or do you plan on merging it? If you merged it, why didn't you merge it? And then just be like, just do whatever you need to do already.
That's where we get back to Callum's point of, you would have to be the one to ask that question, Tony. You have to get invited to a media call to ask that question because you're the only one who's going to.
Why is it up to Tony to fix America?
I'd say the main issue I have with this title is just the fact that it's just another mid-card championship.
And you don't need a third one to begin with. Like,
because the idea is every title should have not such a gimmick, but a unique aspect to it. Whether it is the case that the TNT title should be a title that's defended every single week on television. I don't think it should ever be defended on pay-per-view, even though, you could get good matches out of it. It should be a television championship. That is like the goal of it, is you become that champion and you have to defend it every single week. And then, on pay-per-view, you can have whoever the champion is be involved in like, tag team matches or just some like other kinds of you got Cole Fletcher as part of the Don Callis family, so he could be in some kind of trios match with other members of the Don Callis family against another random trios team. But if it was up to me, then both the TBS and TNT titles, the rule behind them is they're defended every single week on television, and that's just it has to be defended every week on TV. And if someone can't defend the title that week, then the title gets forfeited, and it's an immediate we crown a new champion, it gets vacated, and we crown the new champion on the next show. And then even national, international, whatever you want to call it, like this national title is the one that's the roaming championship that's basically defended between multiple promotions. It's like, it's your kind of spirit of unity one where in AEW has a working relationship with New Japan and Ring of Honor, and obviously they own Ring of Honor, but have with New Japan and CMLL and Stardom and whoever else. So that should be a title that's, you know, goes between promotions and is defended on multiple different fronts. It's your kind of AEW's gateway to other promotions, both nationally and internationally. And then you've got your world title, which is your big, you know, big for both the women and the men. That's your just big main event championship. And then if you want to have this like either unified or continental or anything along those lines, that's where you just build it around, like, you know, you've got your tournament wrestling, which is like, you've got the Continental Classics, that's the grand prize of that tournament, and then you have the gimmick attached to it where, like, there's, I don't like the way that people sometimes word it, like, it's not about that there's no interference, because there's no interference, there should be no interference in any title match. It's more a case that you don't have any managers, they've got 20-minute time limits, there's more of a kind of traditional wrestling feel about it. So as long as it doesn't matter how many titles you have, as long as they all have a distinct purpose that separates it from any other championship. But you need to do that. And I just think that AEW, and especially in the past, just hasn't done enough to distinguish the titles from each other. They're just, you know, they're just there to help establish some people and give them something to hold. So you need to, that's like, and this goes for AEW in particular, but like every single promotion, every title should have a distinct purpose to it beyond just, you know, because I don't like the idea of like, oh, this is your mid-card title. Like, what does that mean? What does mid-card mean? Does that mean that like under, like up? Because like Becky Lynch is holding the Intercontinental title for the women right now. Is she a mid-carder?
Right.
I don't think so. It's like, so, and usually the people that have the best reigns with the Intercontinental title aren't really mid-carders. They're usually people that are on the cusp of the main event, or should be, or could very easily be main eventers. So I just think that, yeah, it's just an issue with titles in general nowadays, that a lot of them are just props and means of just eliciting an additional pop or an additional bit of, you know, fake prestige, because you can't actually build up stars or tell compelling stories on television. So that's my bigger issue with this belt. It's a bigger overarching thing of like, championships don't mean as much as they used to. Not be like old man just shouting at clouds like back in my day titles meant something, because fundamentally I'm probably of an age of pro wrestling where titles probably haven't meant anything because I've been watching only for 20 years, whereas like when titles were just sparse and not around as much, that was probably in the 70s 80s time. But yeah, that's my bigger issue, not so much what it's called or what it's supposed to or whether like the NWA should still have the rights to a national championship or not. It's like, yeah, just, you know, give your title some definition to them. That's the most important thing.
I wish that we were in an era where people like, the transparency element and the whole like just thinking, and like I feel like a lot of things can be solved by just like thinking for 10 minutes, or like having more than one voice just be like, hey, you do realize that blank, and then somebody goes, oh fuck, I didn't think about that. And you know, I'll put out a thing if I need to. I'll put out a thing requesting the media access for Full Gear just to ask Tony Khan that question. I don't think I'll get approved for it, but
they come. It's another just overarching thing, not to just like belabor the point, but it's coming up with a short-term quote unquote fix for a problem you've created already through this exact same approach.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that like you're creating another title to fix the fact that you tried to do something with another championship and either failed or decided to go in a different direction, and now you're trying to do the same thing with a different title. Like, and you're just going to find yourself probably running into the same problem you did with the other title, which is you're just not going to use it in the way that it was intended, and you're going to fall back into old habits, and then you're just going to find a way to unify this with another championship down the line, and then 3 years later you're going to try and introduce the same title to try and do the same thing over again. It's
It'd
like
be the global world, whatever, international, intercontinental, continental, national championship.
Yeah, and it's not in the same vein, but like, you know, the Speed Championship is a gimmick that was there to replace the 24/7 Championship, which was there to replace the Hardcore Championship, which is there to replace. Eventually, you just go cycle and you just do the same thing, and then eventually you get bored of it, or you just end up doing the same thing over and over again, and you're just like, it's got no variety to it, and you just move on. So yeah, the Speed Championship should be dead, but it will die eventually because there's only so often you can be doing that. Like, as I like, the Pure Championship died for a while in Ring of Honor, and then they brought it back, and like it's that these sort of gimmick championships do have a life expectancy to them. If you
Look at that Heritage Cup, for instance. Where is that?
Yeah.
It's another thing. If I could talk to Triple H or Shawn Michaels and just be like, why is this the fourth time that the Heritage Cup disappeared? Can you just fucking get rid of it already? We clearly know that you don't like it.
See, and then I'm the guy that goes, all right, if you're going to insist on having championships, let's get some kind of hardcore title in there. Get something that has an actual like gimmick to it.
Yeah. Do the Cruiserweight Championship in AEW instead of the National Championship,
Well,
but then you can at least be like,
Championship.
all right, cool, we could give that belt to like a Dante Martin or somebody and then make it seem like they're important in their kind of way where, you know, fucking Commander wins that belt or, you know, whoever, and then you go, I'm the king of the Cruiserweights. The national title? Fuck you.
So the naming of it won't affect me as long as like they use it with a distinct purpose in mind. But the main issue I'll have is if they just do that purpose for a couple of months and then just revert back to it's just a title with a name. So,
and I'll say this: I think the distinct purpose should be if you're going to use the NWA excuse, the NWA National Champion at any given point in time is the de facto number one contender to the NWA World Champion, or at least that's how it was in the 80s. That could be an easy in for, hey, maybe you're in a pinch, you got a guaranteed number one contender in your national champion, who, by the way, I think might end up being Bobby Lashley.
And then that should be, well, then shouldn't the unified champion be the number one contender because that guy's got two belts?
You gotta
and what's
let go
the difference
of the
between the unified and the national? Which one ranks higher? Well, about the TNT title, shouldn't that matter as well? And then you get into the argument of like, well, out of the 4 mid-card belts, which one is ranked higher? Well, 2 of them have the same name, and one of them is merged with the other one, but that one's the Triple Crown one. That's not the Triple Crown because 2 of those belts were not in the company. And then you come back around to the idea of, wouldn't it have just been a lot easier to just have Konosuke Takeshita challenge Kazuchika Okada for the international title? And then Okada drops the international title, and then you got the international title back separate again?
I think overall this discussion is leading me to an idea of like, it's doing either like a Darkcast or a podcast where we kind of discuss, if we were in charge of wrestling promotion, what championships would we have, and how would what would be the hierarchy or the purpose of them?
I like that discussion because I already have a mapped out thing of what I would do if I had my own promotion.
Yeah, I probably have an idea as well. I've had things like we've probably showcased it in some formal fashion in our like fantasy cards and stuff like that as well. But
yeah,
like I think it's worth discussing because like it is just a growing thing it's been an issue for years and years, but these promotions either have too many titles or they have too many titles that essentially do the same thing. Like, because there is no distinction between the United States and the Intercontinental title. They're just on different brands. There's no distinction between the there was no distinction for a while between the Continental Championship and the International Championship before they were unified. It's like there's just too many issues with the current approach to when championships are made and what do they mean and are they worth shit anymore? And it's like, we need to fix it.
And I think I would distill all of this down to the fact of, and I say this with all the love in my heart for people like this, because I was like this, and I'm sure Callum was too. This is where you get into the idea of, not a derogatory statement, but Tony Khan sometimes seems to be booking like he's just playing with action figures.
Oh yeah.
And this is like but today I want to have a national title, and I had this cool idea, and then tomorrow I have a fun idea for a unified title because I just finished watching some Memphis tapes, and I like that name, and like that's fine. I love that about Tony Khan. Like Tony Khan's a fucking nerd, and I love it. I do. It's just in practice, it sometimes gets a little cuckoo.
And that's with the other person that he's playing with, the other action figures, and you do the I'm more important because I'm the world champion. Well, I'm the super mega global champion, and I got a force field. Yeah, well, I got force field piercing bullets. Oh, well, those my force field actually has force field piercing bullet force fields, and I whatever. It's like, you're not the national champion. You're the international champion. You're the intercontinental champion. You're the continental classic champion. You're the, oh my God, fuck you. Can you just have 2 mid-card belts? You don't even need, technically speaking, you only need 1. I mean, technically speaking, you only need 1 world champion. We should do the Starcast. We should do that maybe next week or so.
This is what I'll leave it at, because I think Dave Meltzer actually said it right. Across the board, there's too many championships. And AEW, at its most popular, had maybe 4. So, and that's from Dave. So I'll leave it at that because I kind of agree with that.
Well, if you do want to see us do that Darkcast idea, which, if you want me to explain the stuff I've written out and hear what Rob and Callum's thoughts would be on their setup for championships and stuff too, let us know. We could try to do a Darkcast for that like next week or something. In the meantime, share your support for everything across the board, and go and check out all of the links you can find on the link tree at anthonymango.com or amangotree.com for all of my stuff, all the stuff for Smark Moment, and all the Fanboys Anonymous stuff as well. If you're interested in Fanboys Anonymous, as I mentioned before, I had already recorded the Survivor Series DC Comics episode. So that AEW DC crossover, if you want to know who's on the Bat Family team and who's on the House of L team for Superman and so on and so forth, heels and baby faces and all, it's a fun ride. So check that out if you're interested. Make sure that you're following Rob and Callum too.
Yeah, I was along for that ride. You'll hear animated thoughts regarding the Bat Family, and the rest is me going, that's a great idea, Tony. Let's do a James Bond Royal Rumble.
And if you want us to do a James Bond Royal Rumble, we can do it.
Yeah, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Felice if you so choose. Callum?
You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every single Saturday over on smarkmoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And check out the Fantasy League, also at wwefantasyleague.com, to see how our different rosters are performing, who's picking up points as we head towards Survivor Series War Games. And yeah, if people win those matches, or whoever's on the winning teams of those matches, will get some nice bonus points to that as well. So always worth a scramble once the teams are actually finalised to try and get those people on your rosters if you so can.
So we, of course, have plenty of stuff coming your way. And as usual, just make sure that you're following us on all the different platforms and checking out all the stuff that's happening on smarkmoment.com as well. And that's going to do us in for this episode. So leave your comments below, and we'll see you next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.